America is a nation of immigrants. Think of your relatives. Who were they? Were they Italians? Were they Lithuanians? Whoever they were, Russians, whatever they were. English, doesn't matter. African Americans who came over as slaves in steerage. We owe a debt of gratitude to our ancestors because they suffered in order that we could be here today. And I'll be eternally grateful to my grandparents and great-grandparents for allowing me to come and be born in a dinky little labor camp in Delano, California. Because then began the process, or should I say, we continued the Mexican process of liberation. We were no longer in Mexico, we were in the United States of America. We were in California. In 1940, I don't know what the population of Arizona was, but California was a state of 6 million people. Roughly 750,000 of those were of Mexican descent. So we were really, truly a minority. I remember going to school, to grammar school, and it was like being in the Midwest. I didn't know the Midwest, but there it was before me. You know, we had cakewalks. You know, we used to cut out pictures of Abraham Lincoln and George Washington. You know, put them in the school. I learned my ABCs. You know, these are your forefathers. Oh, okay. Muy bien. You know, didn't know about Benito Juarez or anything like that at the time. I said, I'm an American. I'm an American. And but the thing is that there was other things that guided me along and began to shape me. You know, when we've talked about the Pachuco, and I was really, really honored and pleased to see what this amazing group did with Pensamiento Serpentino. And Mario, the director, ¿verdad? Muchísimas gracias, Mario. Increíble. Un montaje tremendo, you know, del Pensamiento Serpentino. Un poema épico que me salió de no sé de dónde. You know, in 1972, it was sort of an outpouring that I had to put it all down real quick. And the thing is that it was a Gestalt vision, I guess, you know, of our Chicanismo. But it's amazing. I've never seen it staged before, and it was an eye-opener. You did a wonderful job, you know, and I'm really pleased. Bilingual también, que bien. Lo bilingüe es muy importante, you know. But anyway, you know, they mentioned Tezcatlipoca there, and then you saw the Pachuco come out, you know, and give the monologue también, which was brilliant, amazing, que bien. And he's Tezcatlipoca, so these are two visions of Tezcatlipoca. El Pachuco is my version of the dean of Hard Knocks, you know, the School of Hard Knocks in Mexico. He's the president of la Universidad del Chingazo Avisa, you know, which is basically the School of Hard Knocks is the learning by experience, you know, as opposed to Quetzalcoatl, his twin brother, that is learning with books and learning with literature and with poetry. And both kinds of learning are really quite essential. But in the barrio, we had more of Tezcatlipoca, more of the Pachuco type of learning than we had of the Quetzalcoatl. We had to be able to come to places like Phoenix College to pick up the Quetzalcoatl part, you know? And that wasn't always available in Mexico until very recently. That's what the revolution was fought for in Mexico. And finally, all those corruptos that came out of the Mexican Revolution finally died off. They got old and died. And what you have now is a new rebirth going on in Mexico that is tremendous. And it's very much like the Chicano rebirth that we experienced here in the 1960s, which is really curious, which is really amazing to me. We, those of us that are the children of immigrants, came into the United States and suddenly found ourselves in a vacuum. We were no longer in Mexico. When I was a kid and I was hanging out with basically white teachers and white students, there weren't that many Mexicans in school. It was really amazing. I had to learn to speak English. There was no other way. Total immersion. And so the thing is that I found myself really kind of curious to see what is this place, Gringolandia, you know, that we're in here. And all my teachers, you know, I didn't get educated because I got taught by Chicanos. I got taught by Anglos. You know, there are good Anglos. There were some very fine Anglo teachers, including my high school English teacher. His name is Ed Farrell. He was my teacher 55 years ago. He's still my friend. He lives in Austin, Texas. God bless him, he's 86 years old. I see him every year. He's the son of Irish immigrants, an Irish American. But his English was impeccable. And he was also my speech teacher. So he taught me how to speak. So as I speak, you're hearing the voice of Ed Farrell. You know, we learn from our teachers. And the thing is that he was the kind of American that I really appreciate and that I identify with. This is the America of the working class. This is the America of the union movements, the America of the civil rights movement. This America has also existed, and I'm very grateful to all of my teachers who had the conscience to educate this Chicanito. But occasionally, I found one that didn't understand, and I'm going to share a little story with you. A little yellow truck story that I tell. I tell little Louis stories, you know, because that's kind of illustrative of what the whole lesson has been. I told a couple this morning over at Chandler Gilbert. I'm going to tell you this one. So when I was about 8 years old, you know, and I knew pachucos for the first time. These were my visions in Delano, California. I knew two pachucos. One was my cousin Billy Miranda, that I dedicated Zutu to, and the other was his friend Cici. But let me come back to them. So there I am in the 3rd grade. I'm 8 years old, little Louis, you know, already hooked on paper mache and kind of interested in the theater, you know. But anyway, I had a young, beautiful college-age teacher, Miss Newfield. Miss Newfield, you know. It was ironic, the ironies. But the thing is that Miss Newfield was sweet on the 6th grade teacher, who used to teach shop to all the 6th grade boys. All the boys took shop, no girls in those days. We're talking 1948. And so one day she walks into our classroom with a big yellow wooden truck with wooden wheels. Now, if you were a kid during World War II like I was, you'll know that our toys were made out of wood. There were no metal toys, there were no plastic toys. Everything was wood in the store. So she brought this beautiful little stake truck that was yellow, the round wheels, and it was made by the kids in the 6th grade. And of course, the 6th grade teacher had given it to her. And she decided to bring it into the classroom and to present it to a student, a boy. The girls were out of the running, okay? That's the way it was, 1948. But she says, what we're going to do is we're going to award this truck to the best behaved boy in class after a month. And I thought to myself, well, that's me. That's gotta be me. Now, I knew, like everybody else, that she had a pet. Now, I forget his name. It was a little Anglo kid. His name was, let's call him Jimmy for all intents and purposes. So I said, he's my competition. Now, I wasn't a bad student. You know, I loved school. I loved to write. I loved numbers. I reveled in it, and my teachers responded. And so that wasn't a question, am I doing the work? I was doing the work, but I knew that Jimmy was my competition, you know? And so I said, I have to be real good. And one day, during that month, early on, I saw Jimmy handing out papers. He was a class monitor. So I got an idea, and I went to the teacher, and I said, Miss Newfield, tomorrow, may I be class monitor and hand out the papers, you know? And she got real serious, and she said, sit down, Louis. And I said, uh-oh. And she says, you know, Jimmy is the son of a grower. His daddy has a big ranch right outside of town. And I said, yeah. Well, when Jimmy grows up, he's going to have a lot of workers, and he has to be able to give orders, you know. And your father's a farm worker, and he works in the fields. And when you grow up, you're going to work in the fields. And so you're going to have to learn how to work for somebody like Jimmy. So he has to learn how to give orders, and you have to learn how to take them. That was essentially it. And I said to myself at 8 years old, well, that's bullshit, you know? But I was 8 years old, a chicanito. I didn't say it, no, it wasn't going to jinx my chances against the teacher. I said, esa es pura caca de toro. You know what I mean? But I said, okay, teacher, all right. I was going to be very patient. I'll find some other way, you know. And then next couple of days, I saw the teacher walking into the classroom, and Jimmy standing on top of his desk. You know, he's little horsing around, standing on top of his desk. And the teacher saw me, said, get down, Jimmy. And I thought to myself, ya chingue, I'm in. I'm in, man, you know. My competition has shot himself down, you know. But no, at the end of the month, you know, came the big announcer. She put the truck up there, you know. I was salivating, and she said, and the truck goes to Jimmy. Oh, man. Was I mad? Was I disappointed and then suddenly enraged? I was 8 years old enraged, you know what I mean? I said, this is unfair. Jimmy was standing on top of his desk, you know, and she wouldn't let me hand out papers. This game is rigged. What is this? But, you know, I was so angry that I ran out of the schoolyard. You know, it was the last class there. So I ran, and I was running. I said, I'm going to run over to my abuelito's house. And as I was running, I was thinking, my abuelito has a shop, and he has tools. And I'm going to go over and I'm going to use those tools, and I know what I'm going to do. So I went and I found my abuelito in the backyard, and I said, abuelito, can I use your tools? You know, usa sus herramientas. He said, ¿para qué, mijo? He said, yo voy a hacer una troca. You know, and he kind of smiled. He says, bueno, okay, pero, you know, clean up after yourself. And so I went to work, man. When you're 8 years old, you can't wait. You know what I mean? So I went into his lumber pile, and I found a 2x4, you know, and I found other pieces of wood, and I began to work all that afternoon. I felt like it took me all day, but actually it was just a few hours. So there I was, serruchando and hammering, and I got the tops of mayonnaise jars, you know, for the wheels, you know, and I got the Coca-Cola bottles for the headlights, and I put little stakes on it. And then, you know, as I began to work on it, it's looking better and better. This is what that's what matter, you know. And then it was a little off balance, but I, you know, le daba un codazo, you know, and then I'd straighten it out. And then it began to look like a truck. I said, it's amazing. I said, I gotta paint this thing. So I went to my abuelito's stash, and damn, no yellow paint. Pink. De madre, vámonos, árale, you know. So I painted it pink with black highlights, you know, and a little white on the side, and just as I was finished painting, my abuelito walked in and said, ah, hijo, he says, un troque. And I said, yeah. He said, oh, you really? You think so? He said, mira, está muy bien hecho. And I said, well, thanks, abuelito. Ahora limpia la cosa aquí. So I cleaned up, and I picked up this truck. It was still wet, and I ran home with it. And I walked in, and I showed my mom, and God bless her, she was always amazed at what her kids did, you know, but she was amazed. My dad, when he got home from work, you know, the whole family was looking, wow, look at this, mira que hizo Huicho. I was called Huicho then, I was Luis, you know. Mira que hizo Huicho, you know. It was amazing, you know, and after that I began to make airplanes, you know. I go out into the fields and find bamboo, I find whatever I could to make stuff. I make airplanes, I made boats, you know. I made all kinds of stuff. I found my creativity, you know. I found that I could do stuff with my hands. And the moral of the story is, when in doubt, build your own damn truck. You know? And it was that way, already. So about that same age, I had these two Pachuco acquaintances, you know. Billy, my cousin, used to live with us. He'd go work in the fields with us, you know. And Huichucote, you know. Se parecía a Tintan. He used to look like Tintan, you know. He was very popular with the ladies, handsome dude, you know. Muy güerito, you know, the whole pelo chino, you know. Always with oil, 3 roses, you know, in the hair. And he loved music. He was just kind of hip. I really liked him. He was very hip, primo. And I liked his style. And one day I heard him arguing with, well, he wasn't arguing, but my mom and my tia, his mother, were talking in the kitchen, and they were saying, you know, are we Mexican or are we American? Are we Mexican? And Billy piped up in the kitchen. He said, Chale, I'm neither American or Mexican. Yo soy Chicano. And that's the first time I heard that. I said, Chicano. Well, if he's Chicano, I'm Chicano. You know, I must be Chicano, which is the blend of the two. And so I really love Billy. And he became sort of an internal presence in my head, you know. Unfortunately, unlike his amigo Cici, Billy died young. He died here in Phoenix, 17 knife wounds to the chest. He didn't deserve it. We don't know who did it. It was always a mystery. Someone knifed him to death. And he died. And they shipped his body back to California. I remember I went to his funeral. But the thing is that Cici, his compañero, the other chaparrito, dark Pachuco, used to hang out with him, come over to the house, lived. And he went into the Navy about that time of the yellow truck story. And so at that time, the movie theaters were segregated in California, okay? You know, no one had to push me into the civil rights movement. I went into the civil rights movement because I could see the reality in California. We were discriminated against. You can't go to the movies and sit where you want. I mean, that's terrible for a kid, for anybody. But in those days, only the white people could sit in the middle, and the Filipinos and the blacks and the Mexicans, you know, off to the sides, and or up in the balcony. And all throughout California, that's the way it was. So in 1948, what happened is that Cici went into the Navy, actually before that, and he got a little bit of World War II. And he came back in his uniform and put on his civvies and went to the movies in Delano. Now, the theater was segregated, but he said, I'm serving my country, and I'm going to sit where the hell I want. ¿Entiendes? So he sat in the middle. And the manager came running. He says, you can't sit here. And Cici said, ¿Y por qué no? He said, well, it's not allowed, you know. No, hey, I'm gonna watch this movie here. Not moving. So they called the cops. And everybody noticed the way the cops came into the theater, and they took CC out. They arrested him. Well, we thought they'd arrested him. They took him to the station. And some of his friends, lo encaminaron, they went over and stood outside the station waiting. He was held for a couple of hours. They grilled him. They tried to intimidate him. But there was no law in California that said you couldn't sit in the middle of a theater. It's ridiculous. That was custom. So after 2 hours, they had to let him go. And all his friends noticed. Ah, cabrón, they let CC go, man. He got off scot-free. So you know what happened the next weekend? Everybody went to the movies and sat in the middle. The desegregation of the Delano Theater began the desegregation of the movie theaters in California. In 1965, when I was on my way, I was living in San Francisco working with the San Francisco Mime Troupe, trying to get my plays produced, participating basically in the civil rights movement, and well, sort of a quasi-hippie, actually. I was kind of living a hippie life, in the Haight-Ashbury, before I went psychedelic. But I kept receiving these newspapers that my grandmother was sending from the Delano area to my mom. And it was from Delano, and it was a Malcriado, the name of the newspaper. And so I said, I gotta see what's going on here, what's happening. And then suddenly, the great strike breaks out. And I knew where I had to be. And I had this idea, that I wanted to do theater out by and for farm workers, working directly with the workers as the actors. It's a long time coming, inspired by many things. I'd been educated, that helps. But the thing is that I went to my mom in San Jose and I said, I'm going to Delano. I'm going to join the strike. And she says, oh, you're going to work with Cici. I said, Cici? That vato's still around? And she said, mijo, don't you know who Cici is? I said, who? Cesar Chavez. So the Pachuco that I went to work with became the apostle of nonviolence. That was Caesar. He gave up the Pachuco ways, but not the spirit. There was a Pachuco inside Cesar Chavez. That's what made him such a strategic general, He could figure out ways to do things. This is why he was able to take on the whole structure of media in the United States and use it to the advantage of the causa. This is why he turned himself into an icon and his body into a battlefield by fasting. Because, when he didn't have enough money to eat as an organizer, he fasted. He turned it into a religious event, a spiritual event. He took power over himself. And I've heard the same thing from people that have been in the Pinta, in prisons, that they have to internalize the oppressor, the penal system, in order to liberate themselves from prison. Well, Cesar did that as an organizer. He used to make things happen out of nothing. He took a movement, created a movement out of nothing, out of the pobreza, out of the poverty of Delano. And I went to him with this concept of a theater up by and for farm workers. Now, I'd been extraordinarily lucky because I'd already been to college. I got my degree in English. I majored in math and physics my first year. I mentioned that because not too many people think Mexicans can count, But actually, I was a straight A math major, double major, math and physics. And I was thinking of going to do theoretical physics. But you can't do that with a degree from San Jose State. A professor says you have to be from MIT. And in those days, my chances of getting to MIT were nil in 1958. So I said, well, what else can I do that is the equivalent of doing research on the human race? And I thought the arts. But the arts, not as a frivolous thing, not as the plaything of the rich, the arts as something that will help the greatest mass of people, the people that need the inspiration to lighten their lives and to hope and to discover also the power of creativity in themselves. And so I thought, I'll go back to the labor camps. And I'm going to go to Cesar and pitch him this idea of a theater by and for farm workers. And so I told Cesar, I want to do this. And he says, bueno, está bien, but there's no money to do theater in Delano. He said right away. There are no actors in Delano. There's no stage in Delano. There isn't even time to rehearse. We're on the picket line day and night. You still want to do it? And I said, absolutely, Cesar. What an opportunity. And so I went back to Delano as a volunteer. Eventually, I was elected picket captain. And that allowed me then to take control of the picket line out in the middle of nowhere, but to teach the people rhythms that I had learned in the civil rights movement. rhythms of how to keep the energy going, teaching them how to sing. With Agustín Lira, we translated, "We shall not be moved, no nos moverán." We translated, "Solidaridad para siempre." We translated, "We shall overcome, nosotros venceremos." And we began to sing this music at the meetings, and we could see how it energized people. Like Cesar, we were inspired by his example in Dolores Huerta. We participated in the creation of something out of nothing, because that something is the human spirit. Now, I'm a Neo-Maya, as Pensamiento Serpentina says. I really believe that the roots of American philosophy extend all the way back to the original cultures, the indigenous cultures of the Americas. You know, I've had a Western education. I know who Sophocles is, Euripides, you know. I know Western drama, Shakespeare, Racine, the French Phèdre, all that business. I know that, and I love that. I love Paris, I love London, I love all those places. But I love America at the root. And so I'm proud that El Teatro Campesino in 1974 performed in San Juan Teotihuacan at the foot of the Pyramid of the Moon, and that we did the recreation of a Mayan myth, because that's celebrating our American origins. You see, what these immigrants are bringing with them is the riches of America. You never know who you're meeting on the street. You think you're meeting some poor desgraciado, you know? No, it could be the next genius who's gonna find the solution to cancer. Whatever it is, you don't know. This is why I think we have to treat everybody with respect. You are my other self. Tú eres mi otro yo. And America has betrayed itself. The racism that has been endemic to our culture and our country, all over the Americas, not just the United States, all over the Americas. The racism that gave rise to Negro slavery for centuries. They enslaved black people because one group needed another group to do all the hard work. And the way that they could do that was by convincing themselves that this group wasn't worthy of civilization. And that happened with the Indians, and it's happened with the Mexicans. And it's happened with the Chinese, and it's happened with the Poles, and it's happened with the Italians, and it's an old, tired story the world over. It's time that we realize that we need each other, that we need to draw from each other. And so I'm a continental American. And the march toward democracy and freedom, for me, is continental. I embrace it from one end of the continent to the other. And I don't separate the history of the America with borders that separate nations. I think we're either going to be a continent or we're not going to exist. We have to learn how to help each other. And you know what? There's plenty for everybody. There's plenty of water, there's plenty of food, there's plenty of air, there's plenty of space to live. But we have to be willing to share it. We have to be willing to have a society that's more equitable, that roots itself in the human spirit. We're out here in the middle of space, for Christ's sake. We're out here in the middle of a vacuum. And if a creator exists, it is the spirit of creativity that will allow us to penetrate space with faith in ourselves. But if we don't get over our petty little problems here, we're not going to get anywhere. Now, you that live here in Arizona, this is my ancestral homeland. My parents were born here. My grandfather's buried here. You need to know that you're the epicenter. You are the epicenter of a social earthquake that is sweeping the United States of America. What we're fighting here is the clash of two world cultures. The Hispanic culture with the Anglo culture. But they're a lot more alike than they are different. They're both European, for Pete's sake. You know, what about the Indians that you never hear from? We never hear Quechua anymore. Yaqui, Cajita, we'll never hear that anymore. We're arguing over two European languages as if they're enemies. They're not enemies. Mexico is a lot more like the United States than people are willing to admit. Go over there and check it out. You're going to find Starbucks, 7-Eleven, Walmart, Costco. Who's invading who? It isn't all these immigrants that are invading the United States. The United States is invading Mexico. They're changing Mexico. And in some extent, that's good. It's time. It's time that Mexico changed. It's not going to lose its historical relevance and its beauty and its continuity. It needs some democracy. It needs to root out corruption, but so do we. And I'll tell you something, The United States of America does not need to be like Mexico in the sense that there are a lot of rich people and a lot of poor people and no middle class in between. The only solution that we've got is to maintain our middle class made up of all the races of the world, educated, hardworking, and creative. Now that dream has got to exist on campuses like this one, have got to exist in our universities, have got to exist in our literature, or we will lose it. I believe in Tom Paine. I'm an American, I've read Tom Paine. I believe in Ralph Waldo Emerson, Henry David Thoreau. I have followed the writings of Thomas Jefferson. I know there are contradictions. I have inculcated those beliefs into myself together with the writings of Benito Juárez, and José María Pavón, and Bolívar, Simón Bolívar, and José Martí. You know, again, when I was 24, I went to Cuba Revolucionaria. It was with a group of 84 American students to protest the embargo which still exists. Today you can get to Cuba. My wife and I are going to the Cuban Film Festival in Havana in a couple of weeks. We were there last year for a theater festival. Now you can get from Mexico, from Cancun, you can take the plane, or from Mexico City, or you can go from Miami. If it's a cultural, intellectual enterprise, you can go there. It's legal now. But in 1964, when I went the first time, we had to fly all the way to Prague, Czechoslovakia. I went with a group from San Francisco to New York to Paris, Paris to Prague, where we got Cubana de Aviación, and then made it all the way back, 40 hours in the air to get to Cuba. It was like landing on the moon, except the moon had palm trees. And I met Che Guevara. My roommate was Jerry Rubin. I don't know if you know that name, you know. He's gone now, but he was a big radical, you know, back in Berkeley. But he wasn't a radical when I met him. He was just an intellectual. But the thing is that we met Che Guevara, we were with him for 4 hours, a man of 5'10", green eyes, the most beautiful green eyes you could ever imagine. A man that was so soft, so gentle, that it was amazing that they turned him into a beast in some quarters. And when I saw his picture splashed on the front page of the Fresno Bee, mounted on a slab for the whole world to see that he was dead, I was shocked. I said, how could they kill this guy? They don't understand Che Guevara. They don't understand Cuba. And it's time that we had more ambassadors. As a Chicano, as a writer, as a man who's had his plays produced now in Mexico, in Spanish, by the Compañía Nacional, I had the privilege of directing Zoot Suit there last year. It was a hit there. We just got back from Bogota, Colombia. I am participating in my America. And I want to share this America. That all America know that we have nothing to fear from each other. We need to get over our fears and believe in ourselves. The American dream is too beautiful, too broad, too all-embracing to betray it now. And so I say, America, find your heart. America, find yourself. Look in the mirror and see your multiple faceted faces, and know that the future is ahead. And it exists in our hearts, in the imaginations of all of our writers and poets and actors and people who will continue to define this country, which has always been an evolving nation of dynamic energies. To whom does the future belong? ¿A quién le pertenece el futuro? The future belongs to those that can imagine it. Thank you.
Gracias. If you can sit down, if you can bear with me, we're almost through. One more second, please. Sit down, Maestro, for 1 second. Sit down, Prophet, please. We need to acknowledge some people that sometimes we never acknowledge. People that have helped tremendously. And those are the ushers. The ushers that were helping everybody. And I would like to, for the ushers, if are they still here? Yes. If they can come and get also the recognition for the work. This is the young people. These are the future Chicanos. This is the future of America as well. So I would like to call one by one Angela Stenbach to come and receive a diploma, please. Stephanie Jimenez. Stephanie Jimenez. Okay, real quick. Thank you very much. We can clap, It's okay, we can clap. Okay. Luis Villa. Luis, muchas gracias. Also, we need to acknowledge Mireya Muñoz. Emma Valenzuela. And Ángela Stenbach. Gracias, muchas gracias. Y last but not least, man, I'm gonna cry. We want to give a maestro